Welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Rana, and before I introduce tonight's guest, I just want to let people know that this Saturday at 10 a.m. we're having a big cleanup at Riverside Park. Finally, it's warm enough that we can plant some plants and do some mulching. We'll end up with a picnic at 12:30, and everyone's welcome. Bring yard tools if you have them. We'll have things like water and gloves and trash bags. Okay, and staying in North New London, my guests today are Forrest Sklar and Professor Stephen Fan, and we're going to talk about Hodges Square, which has been a very, very busy place for the past year or so, but especially over the past 3 or 4 months. So welcome, Forrest and Stephen.
Thanks very much.
And I guess I'll ask each of you, and I don't care which order you go in, how you became involved with Hodges Square. I guess you became involved earlier.
I'll start because we have more of a history. There was a study done by New London Landmarks through a grant from the State Economic Development Group. There was a placemaking study to study especially the North New London area and what could be done to revitalize it. Out of that group, a year later, came the Hodges Square Village Association, HSVA, of which I'm a co-chair. It was an effort by residents and business owners to try to act as catalysts for greater development in our neighborhood, especially with some of the defunct buildings and some work that really needs to be done, even as much as cleanup and beautification. So that's how I got involved. I'm a business owner in Hodges Square.
And your other co-chair is Kathy Struther, who is a neighborhood resident.
Is a resident, so we have a resident and a business owner, and we have a board of about 6 active members who are both residents and business owners. So we have a good representation of the neighborhood.
Now, how did you get involved?
So I teach architecture at Connecticut College, and I proposed this idea of a design-build course where students design a project and actually construct it during the academic year. And I had been in contact with Penny Parsekian, who was the former president of London Main Street. And we connected because I had curated an exhibit at the Lyman Allen Art Museum about the local Chinese community in American suburbia. Oh. And she connected me to several key players in the New London scene, Constance Crystalflick from New London Landmarks, and Art Coster from Thames Valley Sustainability. And they introduced me to the Northeast New London Plan, and we thought, what a wonderful opportunity. I mean, this area is really the gateway to downtown New London and the college and the Coast Guard. And yeah, that's how I got involved.
And I have to say, I got involved sort of in late 2009. Dr. Norman Garrick, who teaches at UConn, came down to be on one of these shows, and as he drove down past Conn, past the Coast Guard Academy into downtown New London, thought, the students can't get from here to there. What is wrong? And because of his work, that was one of the reasons why Landmarks decided to focus on that one neighborhood, because urban renewal had done such a great job of disconnecting it from the rest of the city.
Well, so the construction of 95 also hurt because it disconnected that area from downtown and destroyed some of the constructs of the area. So it became more isolated.
And you see, like, I think there's something like 80, 100 like empty acres as a result.
Right. Which we'd also like to do something with over the long haul.
Yeah, when you're walking in the sort of desolate spots in the city, it's not pastoral like you're walking through a meadow in the country. So we have some pictures, and we're going to sort of talk about some of the past projects that have been done both by Hodges Square Village Association.
I could talk about that a little. Maybe as you, if you go through some of the pictures, we can talk about them as they come up. But over the past year, we've raised a fair amount of money through donations from some local banks, business people, and personal donations. And over the last year, if you've driven by or live in the neighborhood, you'll probably, hopefully, recognize that we've put in a number of benches, planters, a couple of bike racks in Hodges Square and near Mr. G's, planters, lots of planters. We had the help of Connecticut College during this end of the summer did a lot of painting and work on some of the buildings to spruce them up. And some of the vacant windows, we put some verbiage up about our group.
And trash receptacles.
And trash receptacles, which is beyond necessary in Hodges Square.
Yes. So this is a photo, a very old photo of Hodges Square, and you see a fountain, and we'll talk more about the fountain later. And this is apparently looking south. So I'm guessing if you took the same view now, you would just see that whole series of overpasses.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And a similar scene, but looking north along William Street. And you can see on the right side the Texaco sign.
Yeah, look at that.
There have always been a lot of gas stations, or at least, since the car became, it started out, the fountain was a horse watering place, I think. So it was always a place where your transportation got revitalized.
Right. Fill up one way or the other, I guess.
So thinking about the fountain, one thing that came up during some of the planning, maybe you want to talk about it.
Yes, and actually, one of our big projects for this summer is, or as soon as we can do it, is to bring that fountain that was in that photo is still in existence. It's in the back of the Lyman Allen Museum, and that's where it's located, and that's what it looks like. Our project is to bring that down. It weighs about, I think it's something like 10 tons, but we're going to get a rigger, and it's going to come back to Hodges Square to its original home. And we think it'll be a landmark and an icon for that area. We need a cement pad, and we could use more funding, as we can for many of our projects. So we encourage residents or anybody listening, if they're willing to donate, we can explain how later. But
and the Community Development Block Grant Program is providing
we'll pay for
partial
most
support.
of this, right, but not all.
And while we're talking about the fountain, this is another thing that is not being paid for by Community Development Block Grants, as it turns out.
This is actually being paid by a single individual who has made a donation. We're going to have signage at the top and bottom of William Street, I guess the north and the south end, identifying our area as Hodges Square Village, which is how we'd like to be known as time goes on. And these signs will point people coming off 95 in both directions towards our neighborhood. Eventually, what we'd like to have is shops and stores in our area that would really attract people, including the college kids from both campuses and people from the area to come to Hodges Square to shop and eat and dine, and that's the intent.
Well, I'm thinking about the college kids, and to walk, I mean, most of the kids on campus don't have cars. I don't think they're allowed to in their earlier years. And to walk from the college to downtown, I think, is about 1.25 miles. But it's not a friendly 1.25 miles.
Right. I mean, so I'm actually co-teaching this course with Professor Ann Devlin, who's an environmental psychologist. And some of the research from that discipline demonstrates that if you have a destination or a landmark, say halfway between a route, the perceived distance between, say, the college campus and downtown is shortened. And so that's really the intention behind choosing this site, to create a destination along the way.
Right, and that Hodges Square is about at the halfway point between the campuses and the downtown. So it could make a huge difference in how approachable the downtown seems to be to the students.
Exactly.
That's a perfect match, those campuses, and to have access to, and especially in the winter when it's really, you maybe don't want to walk 1.25 miles, but you're going to walk a half a mile. So it makes a lot of sense.
And one other thing that's connecting there, and I don't think there are any immediate plans to develop around it, but it's been talked about, that if you want to ride a bicycle or walk to Groton, the entrance to the Gold Star Bridge pedestrian path is next to Mr. G's.
Right, off Bailey Circle.
Which was a big surprise to me. I actually grew up in the region, up in Norwich, and I had no idea that the Gold Star had pedestrian access or bike access. And I think one of the components of the Northeast Master Plan is to provide some type of visual landmark to announce that this is the entry. And that was developed by, I think, Brian Kent from Kent Frost.
Yes, in this placemaking. And to further enhance that possibility is apparently there's going to be bike lanes on William Street up to the 95 interchange. So
Oh.
we're trying to get the city to, or hopefully the city, it is a state road, so we may need the state's approval, but to extend those bike lanes up William Street to where we are in Hodges Square, which would also serve the purpose of not only creating a bike lane, but of slowing traffic down, because that's one of the problems. The
Yeah,
traffic is
right now the lanes are really wide.
right. So
much
if
more
you
than they
narrow
need
them
to
with a
be.
bike lane, just by the natural lanes being narrower, I think probably traffic would slow down a little bit.
And I love this idea of turning what some people might see as a liability, this very large or wide
Right.
street, which encourages speeders,
Right.
Right.
and make it an asset because we can fit 2 bike lanes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it could
Exactly.
be terrific.
Especially for the college kids, because I know doesn't the school have a bike borrowing program?
Exactly,
So
yes.
kids have access to bikes all the time. And the Coast Guard students, I know they can't have a car until a senior year, so all those kids are on foot.
Uh-huh.
So
And it is
Or bike.
possible to, I have biked to Groton over that bike route, and it's about a mile long, and you get to an area in Groton that is not far from the commercial district. It
Right.
not right there, but
Right.
it's near where Thames Street comes in.
Right, right.
And people could have so much access to a much bigger world than right around the
Right.
campus if this one spot was developed into a hub.
Right.
So let's talk about some of what Hodges Square was and take a look at some of where we're going. This is an aerial shot, and it's existing conditions. It's from the master plan, so
Right.
it's from 2012. And you get an idea of how much pavement there is.
Very paved over.
A lot of problem spots.
And in excess of off-street parking, you can see that extend all the way in the back of a lot of these commercial buildings.
Which people are not that aware of either.
Yes.
No.
This is not at all marked on the street.
No, in fact, there's so much land given over to the cars here, and it isn't as though you see that much activity.
No, especially on the weekends. It's empty.
And this is what it looked like, I'm guessing around the same time.
Right. And now, at least, if you drive past this or walk past this area, you'll see our bike rack there and our benches, our trash receptacles, and we've done planting in front of the green area is planted with flowers. So we think it seems like we've improved that area to some degree.
I think that,
And that's where the fountain will be.
oh, hey, wait, no, let's go backwards. Okay, and the fountain is going
Right
to
where
be,
those people are walking, that fountain will be. It'll be a major landmark.
well, and this is some of the work being done on the day the murals were painted. I think the planters were painted. There was a lot of mulching and plants put in.
This was a great collaboration with Connecticut College. It was their orientation at the end of August, and they do a number of community projects, and ours was one of them. I think we had, I want to say 50 students. So
You probably did.
We did. We teamed them up with Hodges Square members to do different projects. This was the biggest project, which was mulching that area and putting in plants, and it was quite a project, and the kids were great.
And compared to the older photos, you can see in this one where there was a display put in some of the windows in the Hodges Square building.
Right, that's a vacant.
The ripped up awnings were removed. Trim was painted, doors were painted.
And the sign that says Hodges Square building was actually, the missing letters were replaced, so that was a good thing.
And you can get a little bit of a look at the planters and the benches and the trash receptacles as well.
Yeah.
And having trash receptacles makes a huge difference in how much trash there is.
Yeah, it's really helped.
And this is sort of an artist's
Rendering.
rendition of what the future could look like with the fountain
Yeah,
in
maybe
play.
next year.
Yeah, that would be great. Although I don't know that the fountain will have water in it next year, but it will be there.
It may have flowers.
So I guess my question to you is, how can people get involved in the Hodges Square Village
Well, a number of things.
Association in general?
First of all, if you want to keep up with what we're doing, we have a website we try to keep up, hodgessquare.com. You can like us on Facebook. If you're really interested, we'd love people to come to our meetings. We meet every second Monday in Bailey Circle at 5:30. Everyone's invited. We're actually looking for people to join our board, specifically residents or businesses who are located in our neighborhood.
And that's upstairs in Sun Turtle?
Upstairs at Sun Turtle, thank you. Donations we can talk about later. We always need donations because we have a list of projects after this we want to complete. And Stephen will talk more about that when he goes into greater detail about the Parklet.
And even the ongoing things like filling up the planters with flowers, it's done every year.
Right.
So
Yes.
it isn't a huge expense. There are some plants donated, but there are purchases to be made. So just to do that spring beautification,
Yes.
it takes resources.
Takes resources, even small donations. I mean, we get some help from some of the local florists, for what we're asking for. But even $20, $30, everything will help beautify the area. So.
And labor.
And if you don't want to come to meetings, we're happy to have your help.
It is a very hands-on group.
Very hands-on group.
You can go and come to meetings and do that kind of, get involved in that way. But there are a lot of ways to get involved, even if you're not a meeting person.
Absolutely. We have one person whose help comes in the form of a bulldozer and a excavator. So anything you can bring to the table, we're happy to enlist you.
And I want to invite people, if you want to call in and if you have questions about what's going on, what the group has been through, feel free to call. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the most current project, which I have to say has really kind of captured people's imagination. I've posted a couple of photos on Facebook, and they've gotten like 40 or 50 likes of work in progress. So I think people get excited when they see a space transformed. So do you want to start talking a little bit about this whole Parklet project and how it got started?
So again, this began out of a design build course, which pairs psychology students with architecture students. And it's co-taught with Professor Ann Devlin, who's an environmental psychologist. So at least from the academic point of view, we were excited by this interdisciplinary opportunity. And so we had connected with the Hodges Square Village Association through Art Costa. And we were actually also in talks with Riverside Conservancy.
Right.
But I think the Riverside Conservancy had a master plan and actually some implementable plans with the
Right,
steps.
and the city has allocated some money to doing some infrastructure work in the park. So, yeah, and not just that. I mean, the area you chose was someplace that really needed the work. Honestly.
And it was really the generosity of a private property owner, Mahmoud Tendogan, who gave us the use of his land, which is a former gas station site. The land has been remediated, and it already has a well-defined edge of trees. So we thought, why not propose a park, which I think Priscilla Peabody and Kathy Struthers in the HSVA have been talking about for some time.
Right.
As a place for film screenings. There used to be a farmer's market
Right.
there, led by Art Costa.
Possible music concerts.
And so we began with developing a survey in order to reach out to the community, which looked at different aspects of what the community would want in a park, ranging from, I guess we do have some visuals.
Yeah, and let's start and look at the photos, and,
Sure.
and people can
Okay.
get an idea of where the
Okay,
location
so here's the
is.
site, and just to the north you'll see Copycats, which we have the owner seated right next to me. And Forrest actually has been very generous in terms of the use of container in the back to store equipment, water, and electricity. And then, so across the street is Slice Pizza, and it's the site that's obviously within the circle. You can see there's quite a bit of asphalt and concrete, which we still have to have removed, and is currently used as a parking lot, and that row of trees that I talked about.
And this is sort of what it looked like when you started.
Exactly. And there are some of those planters that Forrest mentioned about how, in which Connecticut College students had helped paint.
Right.
And then there's an electric substation just to the northwest corner. You can see the road to the right of the image leading to that substation. So one of the ideas of the park is to try to at least mediate or block some of the views, at least towards the power lines and the transformers. But as you noted before, Rana, the actual substation building
the building.
is actually,
you can see a little bit of that in the corner of the slide, the far right side. It's
a
an
beautiful brick structure, sure.
Yeah, but the wires.
Right.
and-
Fairly ugly.
yeah, not very park-like. But that was then.
Yes.
So I did put a slide here about the budget, just because everything does cost, even though an amazing amount has been done for a very small amount of money. But part of the reason for talking about it is that, to continue the project, we could use more funds. So maybe you can talk about what's gone into it so far.
So we had $700 from the Student Government Association to provide incentives for local residents to complete the survey. And the incentives were in the form of vouchers, which they could then redeem at local businesses to try to keep those incentives within the local area and the local community. And the remaining part of the money, about $2,400, because we were able to use the excess from the SGA funds, was used primarily for materials. We've been very lucky in terms of donations from UBS Niantic, Tilcon, and Lombardi Gravel, and also the use of equipment and tools. Bob Darrow for the excavator, a parent.
Yeah, and his own hours.
Yes, in his own hours.
Contractor?
A parent of a student, Brad Atwater, drove from New Hampshire. He's a contractor who helped us with the steel rebar and the concrete footing. And Tom Faust, who's a mason, who gave us a quick tutorial and the lending of his tools and the lending of his good spirits, because he's such a great guy.
So how did the students feel about this? Were they excited to have this ability to, really just do something with their hands?
Hands-on, yeah.
Sure, and I would say that it's really exciting to have worked through a concept in your mind or on paper and to actually see it become concrete reality.
Literally.
Exactly.
Yes. So you mentioned this survey, and this is just the areas where the survey was done. How many students were involved in the surveying part, and what was involved in developing the survey?
So the course has 8 students. 3 are from social science backgrounds, and 5 are from architecture studies backgrounds. And under the leadership of Professor Devlin, we came up with a survey, both using the representational techniques from the architecture studies and more quantitative and analytical techniques from the psychology students. And then we surveyed the community along with a number of Hodges Square Village Association members. And this is just a map of the different routes that we were able to cover on a very cold, wintry day.
Of which there was just so many
this year, yes.
Almost into the spring. So I have a couple of slides of just what, generally what people wanted.
Yeah, so the survey covered various aspects from potential uses, which included strolling, farmers markets, community picnics, and art fair, sitting, etc.
And then
to different types of seating, whether that's the type of materials. People preferred wood and brick over seating or sitting on grass. To seating that is part of a structure rather than freestanding. And this is actually quite a surprise because given, I guess, common practices today in design, most people would assume that people would prefer flexible seating so that they can reconfigure it according to whatever social situations or number of people. But the results of our survey demonstrated that, at least for this area, people preferred fixed seating. And perhaps that's more having to do with security concerns that they wanted.
Could be. Yeah, it's interesting. I was surprised that particular result too, because flexible seating where you can move the chairs around
Right.
is generally assumed to be what's preferred.
Right. I mean, you look at Broadway in New York City or
Yeah.
even Harvard Yard up in Cambridge, it's
Right.
all flexible seating. To the style of the structure, whether they wanted curved or angled geometries.
Yeah, and this was like smaller structures with many purposes, as opposed to, I think, big ones. And then the kinds of plantings in the ground, in the containers, plants for screening. You want?
Sorry, I just wanted
Yeah.
to point to this little diagram. So that was an interesting problem or issue that we had to address, which was how do you create a survey or represent certain abstract ideas without being, without promising a specific design.
Oh, okay.
And so we have to be very consistent in terms of our representational techniques, the same view, the same abstract geometry or lines, in order to convey the idea without promising a specific design.
Oh, yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
I mean, these are really interesting issues that I think this cross-disciplinary dynamic really promotes, because a lot of the social science students were concerned about how the survey would create certain biases.
Right.
And a lot of the architecture students were just focused on
How to represent it.
How to represent it, exactly.
Yeah, that is interesting. And then planting, basically it seemed like people just wanted planting in every way possible, in containers, in the grounds, for screening. Use of walls and fences.
I think that, the most important thing about this was that although the Connecticut College students and faculty had a plan, the plan was really directed by the community. So the residents who were going to use the park are the people that really decided how, maybe not every aspect of the park, but in general, the whole design.
So yeah, it was very responsive to what
exactly.
people
That was
want.
really important to us as Hodges Square Village Association, and I think to the students and faculty also.
And this last thing, the open-ended questions and results, which is probably came from the psychology end, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, and some interesting results out of this open-ended question series brought up issues that we had never considered. For example, the use of the space as a dog park. There was not an option within the multiple choice format of the
Right.
survey, but that was brought up.
And so the things that you see in big words are things that came up repeatedly.
Right.
Right. I should mention something in conjunction with this. It's interesting. One of the things we did at the outset of forming Hodges Square Village Association, within maybe a couple of months of our origination, was we also did a survey online for residents, and we sent a mailer out. So we gave them a list of things to answer also. It was much more general. It was about, give us some of your ideas and concerns about our neighborhood. And a number of things came up repeatedly also, which is the speed of cars on William Street. It's too fast. We need some trash removal, benches,
Right.
some of the things that we also did. So we
And probably
tried to,
the types of businesses, I think,
types of
also
businesses,
that people were
which repeatedly comes
thinking
back as a
about.
coffee shop / bakery kind of place. So with Hodges Square Village Association is also trying to be responsive to what people are looking for in our neighborhood.
So after all this process, this is a sketch of the design that they came up with.
Right, which is divided into 3 phases. The realities of the academic schedule and the
And New England winter.
and the New England winter, and several other procedural issues. For example, we had to apply for a rezoning of the entire Commercial 1 district in New London, which required
Right.
approval from the state and the Department of Environmental Protection. And so we didn't get approval, zoning approval, until first week of April. Or the
Yeah, I
second
think
week of
so. It
April.
was the first.
And then
April 9th or 8th.
before you dig after that.
Right, right. So this has been a really fast-track process.
Yeah, and this is with no one really objecting to it, but just getting through the bureaucracy of it.
Right.
Which is a necessary procedural step for
Right.
sure. But now the zoning allows for a public park on private land in any C1 district.
And it did not used to,
Exactly.
unless it was a park like the Hygienic Art Park, which is attached
Right.
to another use that's more traditional. So, yeah, so there's a whole new zoning possibility open because of this project.
And I think we also have to thank Harry Smith and Tammy Doherty, who really helped us or guided us through that process.
And this is just a elevation of phase one.
So the idea behind the design, and this is completely spearheaded by the students, this is their design, was to create a curve-like geometry to reference waves and like the maritime history of New London, but also to pay tribute to the namesake of Hodges Square, Arthur Frederick Hodges, who was a submariner who died tragically along with his crewmates in a nautical accident off of Cape Cod.
Well, that's interesting because Brian Kent, when he was doing the master plan in 2012, also thought fountain, and there used to be quite a lot of water which was shunted through pipes at some point in the development of New London. So the water theme is huge, not just at Ocean Beach, but throughout the city.
Right.
I would also say that the curved design creates a much more efficient structure because it takes lateral loads with a single width or a single row of brick. It's been used by Thomas Jefferson at UVA and many other famous cases.
And, well, I didn't know that, but it's also more attractive.
So what we're looking at is actually an undulating wall which forms seating, and you can see in the center there. And then it goes back down to the ground to create a border for plantings.
And we have some photos of work being done. This is just cleanup. There was a lot of just brush and trash removal to start with. And
here's some of the students, and I guess the two professors. There's Anne to the right in the groundbreaking.
yeah, I think the caption on this was like, ready to dig. And so this was the first thing that was dug.
Just to survey the site in preparation for a potential excavator. And thankfully, Bob Darrow pulled through at 11 p.m.
Bailed us out.
Wow.
Maybe it might have been that night.
And speaking of, we have the heavy equipment came in.
And so he's removing some asphalt in the northwest corner, which is where a stage is planned as part of the completion of phase one.
And in the long run, there's more asphalt to be removed, but
Yes,
that's
in the front
something
part of the park, yeah.
that's in the future. So this is what happened to the trench after heavy equipment came in.
Yes. Yeah, so it's dug to 42 inches, which is right at the below the frost line. And we had to compact the soil. And then we laid a layer of gravel or crushed stone.
Oh yeah, I think I have some photos.
This is our little Christo project.
Yes, and you can see the stone.
Ah, yes, the stone and the laying of the rebar,
Yes,
which again, Brad Atwater guided us through that process.
and
And the pouring of the concrete, and making sure that the concrete was poured in a level.
which was not trivial. I watched. I didn't do it. It wasn't trivial because the parcel actually slopes a bit.
Right.
Which is not obvious when you're just standing on it, but when you're laying a level footing, it becomes very obvious.
And this is, again, really a fast-track process. And so instead of creating the plywood formwork, we just poured concrete straight into the ditch because we didn't have time also
Right.
to build up a masonry wall, which would have been a bit more cost effective. But again, we only have 3 to 4 weeks to finish at least 3 bays of phase 1.
And then there's the second load of concrete that came. Now, I thought the templates were very interesting. Did the students build a structure and then plot out the templates? How did that work?
Exactly. So they created a prototype in one of the, we had a little space in a garage up on campus where we tested the layout and tested whether the rebar, the vertical rebar, could be inserted in the cores of the brick. And from that prototype, actually Tegan Atwater, one of the students, Brad Atwater's son, created this wood template so that we could have a consistent curvature repeated in those bays.
So we hit that, and here you can see them laying the brick according to the template.
Right. That first layer was critical because that would set the level line for the laying of the brick.
And you can see there were physical levels, there were laser levels.
Yes.
It was all about leveling. And then here's some more. Well, here you can actually see the bays a bit and the dirt mounded up behind them.
To provide also some lateral support, but also potential places for seating and also just lying down. And you can see some Coast Guard cadets to the left, and the Coast Guard has really been amazing in terms of their turnout. We've had about 17 cadets in the past 2 weeks show up and give their support. So it's really been a collaborative effort with HSVA, Coast Guard, Connecticut College, and the Hilltop community of northeastern New London.
Yeah, that part is as gratifying as anything.
Yes.
To have the number of people volunteering that time.
And then I noticed that the times I was there that the drivers passing by, it's been traffic calming. They stop, they honk, they wave,
Yep.
they cheer. So it's really gained a lot of attention to just see the project in process. And here's another view with some mulch covering some of the bare dirt, but you can see how the wall is built as well.
So it's still, we're still working on the wooden inserts, which would be housed within those convex or concave bays. You can see those vertical piers, which will help support those wooden inserts. And General Woodcraft, Steve Crook from General Woodcraft has generously donated some Ipe wood.
Wow, so it will last forever.
Forever.
Yes. And our goal for the end of the semester is to complete those wooden inserts.
Now, you're planning to have some kind of ribbon cutting, right?
Yes.
Well, we're hoping for, the date we have in mind right now is May 9th. We don't have a time yet. It'll probably be late morning or early afternoon. Depends how far we've gotten. We also plan to have signs, new signs put up. There's a large spot for signage that will say Hodges Square Park. Eventually to get a plaque of some type in front of the park that will give some history, as Stephen just mentioned, of Mr. Hodges, and a little history of how this project progressed from theory to actuality. And the most important thing is, once their project is done, we still need to complete phase 1, which involves a stage, which is very important to the project, and one more bay at the other end, and phase 2 and 3 even later. So,
So the
funding,
project
funding.
And you
And
have
help,
at least
help.
one more workday planned, right?
Yes, this Friday from 1 to 7.
Now, do you need community people for that as well, or you have enough students?
I think we're okay with the students, but of immediate concern is the plantings in order to keep those
Right.
dirt berms in place. And actually,
Yes.
Rana,
I have very little to report tonight. But yes, the planting will be really essential, because if you pass by, you see that all of the soil that came out of the trenches, which is subsoil, is mounded up behind the convex backs of the bays. And it looks really attractive, but
Without
we
planting,
know that
just erode.
when spring rains really come, it's just going to wash out. So we are working on getting ground cover on that, and some shade trees at least started between.
Would be wonderful.
So that when people sit down there, they're out of the sun.
Yes, we want to make it conducive for and practical for use, and all those things will help with the attractiveness, and I think will bring people strolling by to maybe take a break and sit in the park. My employees will probably go over there and have lunch.
They probably
which is great.
will.
I mean, that's a great place for them to go.
Customers from Slice Pizza,
Mr.
Right.
G's, New China.
Yep.
Yeah,
And one of the ideas with this whole project is, as people in neighborhoods, there's some visibility of change. The hope is that we get an investor to take a look at some of the buildings and say, maybe something's happening here. Maybe we'll get some more foot traffic down here and something can actually be viable. So,
and this is the picture of phase one. 3 of the bays have been built. And as you see, the big circular area, which is the stage, and another bay on the other side of it, have yet to be completed.
and that's what we'll be trying to do through our group, Hodges Square Village Association, in the next number of months. And we'll need help for that.
Yeah, both financial help and also
And muscle.
Muscle. yeah.
Muscle, equipment,
Equipment.
supplies.
And we have some slides just so people can get an idea of future phases.
So this is phase 2, which is up abutting William Street. And it's really seen as it's another curved brick wall with a sloped berm to provide an alternative seating arrangement, but also as an entry that's curved geometry, trying to inviting people into the park.
And where that berm is now is where there's pavement and asphalt that has still yet to be removed. That's another project.
Yeah, and that will be a huge improvement to
Huge
that
improvement.
whole area.
Yes, because it'll also, I think it'll make the park look larger.
Yes.
If that's planted, even just seeded. So.
And there's also a little rectangle you can see below phase 2's wall. And that's a possible place for an art sculpture or an installation. And we've been talking to a Khan alum who has done other public art installations, who's interested in possibly donating.
That would be fantastic. And phase 3?
And phase 3 would include a pathway which would connect all the phases. And you can see to the lower left hand corner, phase 3, which would be seating berms, seating planters, and they're of varying sizes and varying configurations, which would allow for people to, sit face to face. Which phase 1 is largely just peripheral seating.
Now, how big a parcel is it?
It's about 120 feet by 100 feet.
So it isn't really huge, but once you're there, you can see that quite a few people could use it. And
Oh, yeah. I could see kids coming there with their parents and, playing, parents hanging out. And, if there's some music playing at the stage, it could be great use in the future. A really great local little spot.
And we've consciously placed more of the permanent structures on the periphery of the site or the boundaries of the site in order to allow for this open green area
Right.
for multiple purposes and uses.
Great design.
yeah,
It's a great
and
design.
so Hodges Square will get its village green.
Right, essentially, yes.
And-
we can't thank Mahmood enough, the landowner. Is
Yeah,
very gracious for him to do this.
I know, because I think, if I recall, the original plan was something much less permanent.
Yes. I think the original idea was to have a temporary installation, which could be moved throughout the William Street corridor or possibly to Riverside
Right.
Park.
Well, Oh, this is hardly temporary.
Yes,
42-inch footings.
brick
Nah.
and ipe.
Yeah, no, it'll outlast us. So if people want to be supportive, and there are a couple different ways to donate, and I don't know, maybe they're flipped. There's a Kickstarter campaign going on right now. If people go to Kickstarter and just do a search on Hodges Square, you come up with it. And, I don't know, you can talk about.
And the current goal, just for finishing the 3 bays, is $1,500. And thankfully, we're quite close to that number. We're at $1,300. But we can also exceed that number in order to hopefully fund the completion of phase 1 or phase 2. And those goals are about $4,000 to complete phase 1 and an additional $2,000 to complete phase 2.
Yeah, so about half of phase 1 is completed.
Yes, yes.
So to really make the stage and the
Yeah,
additional couple of bays.
Our immediate goal is to try and get the funding and the help to finish phase 1 as quickly as possible, because the stage is an important, would have an important function and would give the park much more functionality. Phase 2
Sure,
and
you
3
could
would
have
be nice,
events.
but events, exactly. 2 and 3, if we get the money, great, but phase 1 is what we're really concentrating on.
So if you go to the Kickstarter campaign and it is over $1,500, you can still give and it will
Yes.
still go towards moving this project forward.
Yes, because if you look at it realistically, what we really need is $5,500. 15 plus the next 4.
And the other URL there is the Hodges Square Village Association.
Right, hodgessquare.com. And you can there are donations via PayPal at that site. And I know that you mentioned something
Yeah,
about the site.
I did kind of navigate through that, because when you get to PayPal, it says you're donating to New London Local First, which is kind of an affiliated group.
I will mention
but-
quickly, we're a 401(c), so your donation
Right.
is a charitable one. But we're under the umbrella of Thames Valley Sustainable Connections, of which New London Local First is also
Right.
a subsidiary, so it's a little convoluted.
Right, and the PayPal on the site does say New London Local First, but if you go through the process, there's a place where you can leave a message. And if you just write in the message box, Hodges Square Park or Hodges Square Association, the money will be directed to the right place.
And we can assure you, if you designate it, that's where the money will go. It'll go to the Parklet. So.
Yeah, so that will, so I think those are all of our slides, and I think we're down to about our last 3 minutes. So once again, I guess just to kind of close it out, let people know when they can see you working again and when they can help, and what to expect is coming
Okay.
up.
Well, I think Stephen mentioned that their last date is probably Friday,
Yeah,
from
this
1 to
Friday.
7. May 9th, at least for the moment, looks like a date where we'll have an opening of the park. We'd love to have some people from the community come, show up, and we'd like to encourage you to come and take
And
a look
come
at our
see
work.
it in person,
Yes, come
because
see-
really the photos don't do it justice.
No, you really need to see it. And then over the course of the spring, we'll be doing more work in Hodges Square. A lot of people don't like going to meetings, but if you're willing to lend a hand, whether it's watering the plants or helping us with the trash removal, further painting we may want to do, some more work on some of the buildings, we can always use more hands. You can go to hodgessquare.com. You can we have Art's phone number. I don't know if we have an actual phone number.
There is a
to
Thames
reach people.
Valley Sustainable
That-
Connections phone number,
Yeah, I don't have that.
and it ends 0016, but I don't know how it starts.
I don't know it, actually.
But I think if people go to the Thames Valley Sustainable Connections website, they can find a phone number. But if you go to the hodgessquare.com website, there's a way you can get in touch.
Well, and the phone number is there, and you can always come to Copycats and talk to me.
That's true.
I'm always there.
And when you come to see the Parklet, it's a very short walk.
We're next door, right. So I want to thank, on behalf of Hodges Square, I'd like to thank Professor Fan and Ann Devlin and his students and Coast Guard for helping make this a reality. It's something we could never have done on our own.
So I guess one
Been a great
last
collaboration.
remark from you is, have you gotten feedback from your students? Are they happy they did it, or was it more than they really thought they signed up
Bargained
for?
Maybe I should ask them after exams.
I'm guessing that they didn't really know what they were getting into when they signed up for it.
Well, when it comes to these design build projects, I think no one really knows what they
But
signed
you know
up
what, we had a
for.
meeting, a couple of weeks ago when you introduced exactly how it was going to, a couple of weeks ago. And I asked a number of the students, just curiously also, I said, I would think it'd be gratifying to see your design actually take shape. It's one thing to do it on paper, it's another thing to actually see it. When it's complete. I would think they'd get a lot of satisfaction.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Everyone out there, come see the Parklet. Next week, our guest will be Mike Alowitz, and he has slides. He was an eyewitness to the Kent State killings 41 years ago, and 46 years ago. I don't remember. Anyway, he will come and give a presentation on that next week. And in the meantime, we'll see you up in North New London.
Yes, you will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a walking down the street like Lucky LaRue. Got my hand in my pocket, thinking about you. I ain't a hurting nobody. I ain't a hurting no one. There's 300 men in the state of Tennessee. They're waiting to die, they won't never be free. I ain't hurting nobody. I ain't a hurting no one. 6,700,033 lights on. You think someone could take the time to sit down and listen to the words of my song? At the beach in Indiana, I was 9 years old. Heard Little Richard singing Tutti Frutti from the top of a telephone pole.
I wasn't hurting nobody.
I wasn't hurting no one. There's roosters laying chickens, and chickens laying eggs. Farm machinery eating people's arms and legs. I ain't hurting nobody. I ain't a hurting no one. Perfectly crafted popular hit songs, never use the wrong rhyme. You think that waitress could get my order right the first time? She's sitting on the back steps, just shucking that corn. That gal's been grinning since the day she was born. She ain't hurting nobody. She ain't hurting no one. I used to live in Chicago, where the cold wind blows. I delivered more junk mail than the junkyard would hold. I wasn't hurting nobody. I wasn't hurting no one. You can fool some of the people part of the time in a rock and roll song. 50 million Elvis Presley fans can't be all wrong. I'm a walking down the street like Lucky LaRue. Got my hand in my pocket, baby, thinking about you. I ain't a hurting nobody. I ain't a hurting no one. I ain't a hurting nobody. I ain't a hurting no one. Hurting nobody.